Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala nabi al-kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. So today inshallah we are going to do a quick introduction to the theme that we're going to cover over the next few weeks, which is Al-Mawardi's six qualities of a thriving civilization. It's a very interesting topic. You don't often read about this topic in Islamic books. Al-Mawardi, being both an Islamic scholar and a member of the government, he was very familiar with how to run a state and how to do it properly. And as I mentioned before, his primary work, Al-Ahkamiyya Sultaniya, Laws of Governance, is all about running a state. And he gives a brief look at that in this chapter. And so this chapter, Al-Mawardi basically lays down the premise that for people to be happy, for there to be success in this world, two things are needed. Number one, we need to fix the world. We need to live in a good place. We need to live in a place that has certain qualities, right? The world itself needs to be worth living in. And the other is on the individual level, fixing the self, right? The qualities you need to be a good person. And so this chapter is divided accordingly. It first talks about the qualities needed to fix a civilization, which allows for people to uh, succeed in life, and then the qualities needed to fix the self, to allow oneself to succeed in life. So let's very briefly read through what Al Mawardi has to say on this topic before we go into our discussion. So the chapter begins with two dimensions related to rectifying the world. It says, know that getting things right in the world has two facets. The first relates to the issues of the world, and the second deals with the individual who live in the world. The good states of the two aspects are linked. A person who does well as an individual, while the world that he lives in is terrible, will eventually be affected by the corrupted state of the world and be blamed for his conditions because he derives his sustenance from it and prepares himself for for the year after in it. On the other hand, if a person is in a wretched state while the world is doing well, he will not be able to take any pleasure from the world's well being, because for the human being, the world is himself. He therefore cannot experience the world's goodness except if it is good to him, or its wretchedness except if it is wretched to him. His self is special, and his personal situation is real. He is therefore exclusively concerned with what affects him. So, what he says in this chapter is that there's two things needed for happiness in this world. The world needs to be a nice place to live in, and the person needs to have the internal qualities to be happy. And he says they are both linked, because if the world is a messed up place and you are succeeding in a messed up place, then eventually the corruption of the world will affect you, or at the very least, you'll be blamed for it. Like if you are living in a corrupt society and you are successful, the rest of society blames you for that corruption, right? So if the world is messed up and you're only focusing on yourself, then eventually the rest of the world is going to catch up with you. And he says the opposite is also true, right? If the world is a beautiful place, if you are living in the best of times, but internally you are a mess. In your personal life, it's a mess. You're going through poverty, you have mental health issues, you don't have any good relationships. It does not matter how nice the world is. It does not matter if the world is going through a good phase, because all a person can see is what they themselves are experiencing. So if somebody's experience of the world is terrible, it doesn't matter that the world's a nice place. In his eyes, it's not, right? You could be living in the best of places, in the best of times, but if your life is miserable, it doesn't matter, right? It's not going to benefit you in any ways. So he says happiness comes from both, from fixing the world and fixing oneself. You don't just focus on one or the other. You do what you can to make the world a better place, and you do what you can to make yourself a better person. And it is through these two factors that we can make a world worth living in. Now, this chapter is very relevant to our times. Remember, Al-Mawardi wrote this during the good times. He wrote this during a time where the Muslims were the most powerful empire on earth, the most powerful civilization on earth. Right? He wrote it during the good times. We are living at a time where not only is there no Muslim empire and Muslims are divided and many Muslim countries are facing great trials, but the world itself is a miserable place. There's a lot of pessimism. There's a lot of anger and hostility and division. The secular liberal worldview that basically held the Western world together in the 20th century is starting to fall apart. And people are starting to see that this lifestyle doesn't bring happiness. And people are miserable. People are looking for a solution. Islam has the answers, Islam has the solution. Are we presenting it to people? Are we presenting it to them properly? Are we even aware of it and trying to implement it in our own lives? This topic of happiness, it's very relevant to our times. This is why I wrote a book on this topic. This is probably one of those times where you can really reach out to people who are going through extreme darkness and show them the light of the Quran and how the Quran can bring happiness back to their souls. So Al Mawardi says that there's two things that need to be done if you want success in dunya: fix yourself, fix the world. Right? And obviously that's not easy. And obviously fixing the world is something that each of us have limited capabilities of doing. We don't have a khilafat, we don't have any Muslim empires. Many of us are living as minorities in non-Muslim lands. So a lot of this feels like stuff that we can't do, right? And I would say that in this situation, if you are living in a part of the world that doesn't have these qualities and there's nothing you can do to make it better, consider making hijrah if possible. Consider migrating to a land that at least have half of these qualities, if not more. Right? We don't live in the best of times, so you're not going to have the best of lands and the best of options. But there are some options that are better than others. And it's up to us to choose the options that are best for us. Okay, let's continue reading through the chapter. It says, know that the world does not bring happiness to all its inhabitants, nor does it turn its back on all of them. If it were to be harsh to all of its dwellers, that would be a disaster. And if all of its inhabitants would be equally happy, that would lead to corruption. So he's saying this world, it's not good to everybody. It's not bad to everybody either. Some people's lives are miserable, some people's lives are happy. Some people are born in the best of places, some people are born in the worst of places. Its inhabitants bond with each other based on their differences. This is the basis of coming together and mutual help. If all of them were equal, there would be no reason to seek each other's help. Note that we already mentioned the natural neediness and weakness. They will, as a result, be lost and destroyed as a result of their weakness. When they are diverse in their states, their mutual needs will create bonds between them because the need is a link and the one who is needed reaches out accordingly. So, this is continuing from the previous chapter where he mentioned that uh, human beings are weak and human beings need each other, right? So, he's saying that if everybody was wealthy, nobody would need each other. If everybody was miserable, there would be nobody you could reach out to for help, right? It is from the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of creating measure and balance in this world. There are those in need and those who can help. There are those who give charity and those who receive charity. There's the upper hand and there is the lower hand. This is the balance of this world to make sure that people need each other, that people have a reason to reach out to each other and to establish ties with each other. And so this is the way of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said they will not cease to disagree except him with whom your Lord has bestowed his mercy, and for that did he create them. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that human beings will always have their differences. Hassan al-Basri said this means human beings will vary in their quantity of wealth. One person is rich and one is poor. For that reason, Allah created them so that there is a difference in poverty and wealth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that Allah has preferred some of you above others in wealth and property. So it is clear in the Quran, human beings are not meant to be equal at all. There are those who are wealthy and those who are poor, those who are intelligent and those who are not intelligent, right? Those who are born in good places, those who are born in poor places, right? Those who have opportunity, those who do not. People are not equal. Everyone's circumstance is unique. But this creates balance, right? For this world to function, you need people of every level, you need people of every type. And everyone actually has their role and everyone actually has their usage and their benefit to society. When the world is in a good state, happiness in it is widespread and misery is limited. This is because when the world smiles on someone, it grants him happiness, and when the world deprives someone, still it is lenient to him and allows him to live. So he's saying when you're living in a nice place, when you're living in a good times, then it's easier to be happy. Because even if something's not right in your life, a thousand other things are. It's easier to deal with your difficulties because you've got a lot of good things propping you up. On the other hand, if the world is in a bad state, those who thrive are deluded, and those who are deprived are victims. If the world gives it an account of much hard work, and if it withholds, it simply cuts somebody off from existence. In bad times, you're saying it's very hard to succeed. You have to work much harder to get much less, right? A great poet once said, people are like the times that they live in. Just like a replacement shoe is like the damaged shoe. A man of your times is like your times, and its consistency and states. Likewise, if the world is corrupt, corruption flows through the people. Having said this, we should now start mentioning the principles by which the world can be fixed, followed by the principles by which a person can be fixed. So he ends his chapter by stating that people are a reflection of their times. And the element of qadar here, right? There's the element of destiny here. You do not choose the times that you live in. That's just the reality of the world. Some people were born at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were the Sahaba. Some people were born in the Umayyad Empire, some in the Abbasid Empire. Some were born during the Mongol invasion, and they saw nothing but destruction. Right? Some were born just when World War One was starting. They saw nothing but destruction. Even today, someone could be born in the USA in a thriving, wealthy family and have a good life. Someone else could be born in Gaza and know nothing but war. This is the nature of this world, and everyone is a reflection of the time and the place that they're born into. And you can see this in people, right? Someone who is born in Gaza tends to have stronger faith and tawakkul and tends to be more courageous because the place you live in shapes who you are, right? I mean, you have someone born into a spoiled family in the West, maybe more hedonistic, more atheistic, more obese, right? They don't have these good qualities. The place and time that you are born into have an impact on you. And he dedicates the rest of this chapter to two things. Number one, the six things that fix a civilization. And number two, the things that fix the individual, which is your relationships and your wealth. And so our next few lessons are going to focus on the six things that fix the civilization. And that's where we're going to stop for this year. And next year we will look at relationships and wealth. So again, this is very important for us to understand. We live in a time where, again, we didn't get to choose the time that we live in, but we do get to choose what we do with the time that is given to us. So we live in a time where there's no khilafat, where there are a few good Muslim countries and a lot of messed up Muslim countries, where life for Muslims as minorities, it's starting to get a bit more difficult, right? A lot of the illusions that were there, like freedom of religion and tolerance, starting to erode, and xenophobia and racism are starting to pile up. There's misery in the world today. Islam can fix this. Islam has all the tools to fix this. The problem is we don't have Muslims in power to showcase this in most parts of the world. So I'm not going to read today through what Al-Mawardi says are the six factors that fix the world, because really that is the next 20 pages of the book. Instead, we will read through each one as we do that specific lesson. Instead, I put together the slide where I summarize these six qualities for you, right? So over the next 10 pages or so, Al-Mawardi gives us six qualities of a successful civilization. Six things that if you fix them, you will create good times, right? If a country fixes these six things, they will enter into a golden age, into an era of productivity, success, happiness, ease, which is what we all want. What are the six things that every civilization or country needs in order to usher in an age of goodness? Number one, he said, is religion, and of course, more specifically, Islam. And let's break this down a bit, right? Let's start with religion itself. Every successful empire in human history was built on a religion. There has never been a successful empire that lasted hundreds of years that was atheistic or secular or liberal. These systems do not have the capabilities of lasting that long. Why? Religion creates unity, religion creates identity, religion shapes culture, religion keeps people good even when there's nobody watching, right? There are certain qualities of a religious person that are absent from modern society, and that's why modern empires are just not lasting that long. More specifically, Islam. We believe, of course, that Islam, the final revelation, the true religion of God, is the perfect way of life. And so, if religion creates better civilizations than lack of religion, in Islam creates the best civilization of all. And we'll go through what this means in our next video, right? The world today needs Islamic leadership. What does Islamic leadership create that's not found in modern leadership? Number one, it creates a culture of God fearingness, of taqwa. In an Islamic culture, people are less likely to sin openly and to rebel openly and to do silly things in public, because everyone to some level or another fears God, right? They're not going to be on the same level, of course. There's the righteous and the average and the sinner, but everyone has some level of fear of God. That at least creates some level of self control, at least in the public eye. Yes, what someone does in private is their own business and nobody is sinless. But Islam at least creates a level of godliness in society. Number two, Islam creates a constant set of morality. The morality of Islam is fixed. It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't change from time to time and place to place, which is the biggest problem we are having with the modern system. Morality has changed so many times in my lifetime that it's hard to keep track of what's good and what's bad anymore. They just keep changing it, right? Like, uh, I was telling someone recently that 15 years ago, nobody had a problem with age gaps in marriage. Now suddenly it's a moral issue, right? On the other hand, 15 years ago, everybody knew that transgender is bad. And now there's people arguing that it's good. So there's no set morality. Religion fixes this, and Islam specifically fixes this. Islam's morality is the most fixed of all religions. We know in other religions, people have tampered with their sharias, right? One of the clearest examples was that, in Christianity, divorce was forbidden, and there was a Christian king who hated his wife so much he literally changed the religion and invented a new denomination of Christianity, just so that he could divorce his wife. Right? So they tamper with their law. Our Sharia doesn't allow for that, right? So Islam creates consistency, it creates a morality, it creates godliness. It also is the most effective at creating law and order, because the more of the Sharia that is implemented at a government level, the less immorality there will be in society, at least public immorality, the less crime there will be. Right? You'll find that Muslim lands have lower rates of murder and stealing and other types of crime because of our strict and effective criminal law. Right? So Islam is necessary to create a thriving civilization. And one of the reasons that the world is so messed up today is the abandonment of Islam at the political level, where it has been reduced to personal practice only, while in reality, it should be the law of the land, it should be the dominant culture, it should be, something that flows through all of society. Islam is the solution. Now, the other qualities he mentions all are part of Islam and part of Islam's teachings on governance and running a country properly. So he mentions five things besides Islam that a country or a civilization or a khilafat needs to be successful, and all of these things are from Islam. Number one is a good leader, and we see this in our times. We live in a time where there's very few countries that have a good leader, and you can really make out the difference, right? That there are countries where I have seen a specific land when the leader was corrupt, the entire country suffered. When the leader was good, the entire country flourished. Right? And I've seen this many times in my lifetime. A good leader is necessary for a civilization to triumph. But what is a good leader? This is the big question that we're going to have to address in that lesson. Right? What is a good leader? On one hand, people assume a good leader simply means someone who is religious and someone who is a practicing Muslim and pious, and that's one aspect of it. The reality is, the majority of good leaders in our history were not scholars, they were not pious, they were average, okay Muslims. What made them good leaders? They had charisma, they had influence, people loved them, they understood the needs of their people, they worked hard to fulfill the needs of their people. They genuinely cared about their citizens. This is very important. A good leader genuinely cares about those under his leadership. And by the way, these principles of leadership don't just apply to the Khalifa. Whatever position of leadership you have in your life, you can take these principles and you can apply it to yourself. Right? So when we discuss the qualities of a good leader, uh, you can actually take these principles and apply it on a smaller level to yourself. Whether you are a husband or a mother or or a manager at work or the employer of multiple people, you are a leader in some capacity. And so you can take these leadership qualities and apply it to your level as well. Now, Islam puts a lot of emphasis on good leadership. And we have hadiths that tell us that the people who will be under the shade of Allah's throne on the last day is number one, the just ruler, right? A righteous leader is very rare. And so they have a very special reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is essential. Now, how do you get good leaders? This is something we're going to discuss. Leaders don't come out of a vacuum. They are produced by society through good parenting, through a good education system, through the ulama, through mentors. Good leaders don't come out of a vacuum. There are ways to produce good leaders, and we need to work on that. Number three is justice. And Islam is the religion of justice. This is one of the most essential qualities of Islam. Our Sharia is the Sharia of justice. Everything about it is justice, whether it is our criminal law system, our approach to marriage and relationships, whatever it is, Islam is all about justice. The Quran has the strongest statements of justice in the world. The Quran tells you to be just against your own self, to be just against your own parents, to be just in favor of your own enemies. It's the level of justice that Islam demands from us. Now, Al-Mawardi argues, without justice, as a civilization cannot succeed. In the absence of justice, what happens in a civilization? Tyranny, exploitation, corruption, these are all problems of our time, right? And Islam comes to eradicate these problems. People living in a truly Islamic civilization, they will have this feeling of our leader is just to us. No one's going to take away my rights unjustly. No one's going to mistreat me. No one's going to, you know, I'm not going to have to deal with any corruption. This is justice, and you cannot have success of a civilization without justice. When justice fails and all these other things come up, that's when you get riots, that's when you get rebellions, that's when you get civil wars, because people cannot stand injustice for very long. It is human nature that people cannot stand injustice for very long. You push them and you push them, and they reach a breaking point, and everything collapses. So, justice is necessary for maintaining balance and creating a thriving civilization. The next quality is safety. And again, this is one of the key characteristics of the Sharia. The Sharia creates an environment in which everybody's safe and you feel safe. The hadith states that the believer is the one who people are safe from his hands and his tongue. So even on the individual level, people should feel safe around you. On a civilizational level, our harsh criminal law, it keeps our societies safe, right? If you look at the crime rates in the more religious Muslim countries and you compare it to the crime rates in the West, it's night and day. Right? There is a level of safety under Islam even today, even with the weakness of Islam today, on a political level. Still, you can see the difference. The level of safety that Islam produces is 100 times greater than anything else. When you have safety, you have peace. You can sleep at night. You're not worried about someone breaking into your home. You're not worried about somebody murdering your family members. You can just live your life. And this is something that is essential to our religion, to create environments of safety. The fifth quality is a strong economy. Islam, with our Islamic laws of economics, specifically the prohibition of interest, the prohibition of gambling, and having a free market of a halal free market, this allows a strong economy to flourish, a just economy, a fair economy. It's all about opportunity, right? Islam's approach to economics is opportunity. You work, you build, you start a business, you start a career. As long as you are ethical, as long as you are just, as long as you are trying your best, you get what you work for. And there's opportunity for all. Furthermore, our economic system is also built on generosity. As you get wealthier, the amount of zakah you have to give increases. Not only that, but you are expected to do more than that. Sadaqah, awqaf. This makes life more affordable for others, which creates more opportunities for others. And so Islam creates the best of economies, the strongest of economies. And when you have a strong economy, people have hope. People have a reason to work hard. People have a reason to study. People don't have to stress about money and think about money. Think about the modern world, right? Where the cost of living is so high and salaries are so low, people are absolutely miserable and they cannot think of anything else except how am I going to pay my bills. And this creates misery. It creates absolutely misery. It makes you enslaved to your job. In a strong Islamic economy, people are much more relaxed. There's less expenses and there's more opportunity, and you don't need to overwork to provide for your families, giving you more time to focus on family and society and other important things instead of only having to work all day just to get through each month. Finally, Al-Mawardi talks about the importance of hope and optimism. A truly successful and thriving civilization is a culture of hope and optimism. And Islam teaches us to be eternally optimistic. A Muslim is always optimistic. No matter how bad life gets, we tell ourselves that Allah knows what is best for me. After hardship will come ease. After difficulty will come victory. And our culture is shaped by optimism. And it is the duty of Muslim leaders to create cultures of optimism. Why? In a culture of hope and optimism, people are going to work harder. People are going to study harder. People are going to do more. They're going to accomplish more because they have hope for the future, right? They have hope for a better tomorrow. And this inspires them. This pushes them to be the best versions of themselves. Now, where I'm coming from, we don't have any of these six qualities. And I know on the individual level that no matter how hard you work, there's a limit to how much you can succeed when the whole system is against you. I live in a non Muslim land where Muslims are only 2%. So you don't really have Islam having any civilizational power. The leadership is incompetent. This creates a uh, really broken bureaucracy where it takes years to process documents, which slows down every aspect of people's lives. And then there's corruption at every level, bribery at every level. There's no justice. There's no justice at all. To such an extent that, a recent case I dealt with, an old man was beaten up, right, by a younger man. And it was on camera. I mean, I asked why didn't they, press charges. They said if we press charges, that man's whole tribe will come after us for revenge. So we just had to ignore it. So you have this tribal vengeance overriding justice, and you have corruption overriding justice, and you have bribery overriding justice. There's no justice. Like, there's no point telling the police anything in this country because there's no justice. Then safety. We live in a land where there's crime happening every day, and we live in these compounds, and we're afraid to take a walk. We're afraid to go out by ourselves. If we especially don't go out at night. The first time somebody shot at me, I was like 7 years old. I've been shot at, I've been stabbed, I've been robbed. It's not a nice place to live, and you can't really be your best self in an environment like this. You're just living in constant fear. You develop insomnia. You can't sleep at night because every little noise wakes you up. We don't have a strong economy either. There's one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, and so many young people just they have absolutely no hope about the future. Many of the young people I counsel in my community, are like, what's the point of studying? What's the point of working hard? Life sucks. The cost of living is too high. Salaries are too low. There's racial discrimination. There's xenophobia. Like, what's the point of any of this? And so, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how religious you are, no matter how hardworking you are, there's limits to how successful you can be when you're living in a land that has none of these qualities. That's why I'm currently in the process of trying to make hijrah, to try and find a land that has some of, if not all of these qualities. Because even a 50% upgrade can lead to a 50% better chance of achieving one's goals in life and doing more with life and having living a happier life. Sadly, much of the world today has none of these qualities. If you look at Europe, if you look at America, if you look at much of Africa and South America, most countries in the world lack any of these qualities. Maybe not so 20 years ago. Maybe about 20 years ago, you'd say much of Europe and America, there was safety, there was a strong economy, there was hope. All of this has deteriorated in the past 15 years. And that now leaves us in a state where it's very hard to find lands that have these qualities today. So, what can we do? What's the point of studying these things at this point in time where there's no khilafat? Well, the point of all of this in this day and age is, number one, to find a land that has some of these qualities and to move there if you can, so that you give yourself and your future generations a chance at a better tomorrow, a chance at a better life. Number two, if you have any influence, to try and fix some of these things. If you have any influence to make the world a safer place, to make the economy better, to create a culture of hope, to bring about more justice, you do what you can. So we're going to go through each of these over the next five lessons. We're going to go into details about why Islam is the most important quality for a successful civilization, the importance of good leadership, the importance of justice, safety, a strong economy, and optimism. To end off today's lesson, I want to just go through very briefly the history of Islam. Now, if you are studying this course and you have not studied our history course before this, you may be having a few gaps in your knowledge that I'm hoping that this slide will help to fill. Because we live in a time where Muslims are politically weak, and there is an assumption amongst those who've never studied history that this is the way it's always been, right? That Islam is and Muslim countries are weak, and they've always been weak. No, that's not the case. Our history is one of rise, dominance, fall, rise again, dominance again, fall again. Right? We have a cycle of history. We start off with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the rise of Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a prophet for 23 years. In these 23 years, we saw Islam rise up and take over Arabia and get rid of paganism in Arabia and establish the first Muslim empire. This was the rise of Islam. Islam truly became established in the time of the Khulafa Rashidin, the rightly guided caliphs, the Sahaba, Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, and Ali radiallahu anhum ajma'in. It was during this period, specifically during the period of Abu Bakr and Umar, that the Romans and Persians were defeated. The two great superpowers of the time were defeated by the Muslims. The Persians permanently, and the Romans, partially. And their regions in that area were uh, taken over by Muslims and became Islamic regions. It was during this period that Muslims became a superpower. They defeated the Persians and absorbed their kingdom. And so, by the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, Muslims now ruled over the Middle East, all of it, right? Iraq, Iran, Sham, Palestine, all of it, as well as Egypt, right? And so, at this point, Islam is now a superpower, right? Then we had the dominance. For the next 500 years, Islam was the most dominant civilization on earth. This was the most powerful civilization on earth for 500 years. Throughout the time of the Umayyads and the Abbasids, if you wanted to study, you would go to the Muslim world. If you wanted to experience civilization, you would go to the Muslim world. Muslims created the best hospitals, the best schools, the best libraries, the best universities. Many great advances in technology and education and civilization and culture all took place in the Muslim world. For 500 years, Muslims were the beacon of the world, and everybody else was secondary. Everybody else was benefiting from the Muslims, learning from the Muslims, following the Muslims. Then came the first fall, and Muslims lost power. They became complacent. They broke up into smaller kingdoms, and three events just devastated the Muslim world. Right, so Muslims at the height of their power ruled from Spain all the way to India, across Europe, Asia, and Africa. And then came the reconquest of Spain at the hands of the Christians, where Muslims ruled Spain for 700 years, and then the Christians took it back in a very barbaric, genocidal way. Then came the Crusades, again a genocide in Jerusalem, and they took over. Then came the Mongols, the biggest genocide the Muslims have faced in history. They wiped out entire civilizations and families and communities and destroyed the Abbasid Empire. But that wasn't enough for Islam to fall. It was temporary. For about 100 years, the Muslims were now in a state of weakness. Then they rose up again. In Egypt, the Mamluks rose up. The Mamluks were freed slaves who had attained positions of power. And they defeated the Mongols, and they defeated the Crusaders, and they took back those lands, right? And so Egypt, Syria, Palestine, Makkah, Medina, all were ruled by the Mamluks. up near Europe, the Turks rose up to become the Ottomans. The Ottomans grew even more powerful, and for the next 600 years, the Ottomans became one of the most powerful empires on earth. At one point in time, they were the most powerful empire on earth. And so we have another period of time where, for hundreds of years, the Muslims are the most powerful and dominant civilization on earth, where the Ottomans ruled a large portion of Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, including parts of the Balkans and Greece and Hungary and parts of Russia. It was a major dominant civilization. Then came the fall again. Colonialism, where they conquered Muslim lands like Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Egypt, Algeria, and many others. World War One, where the Ottomans were on the losing side. And so the French and the British conquered the Ottoman lands and divided it amongst their allies, their puppets, and split it up into these small countries that we have today. And that's where we are today. 100 years later, still living through the fallout of World War One and colonialism, the Muslim world is fragmented into tiny countries and states that don't get along with each other and uh, fighting each other. Some of these states are doing well, some are not doing well. Some have just rulers, some have tyrannical rulers. Some are on the side of justice, some are on the side of injustice. But the Muslims are divided. And we don't have that level of power that we had 1,000 years ago, or even 300 years ago. Now, if you study historical cycles, you would assume that the next phase of history would be a rise again. This is what the enemies of Islam are afraid of because they believe this as well. Islam is on the rise again. Many Muslim countries are becoming successful. They are reviving all these different qualities of a thriving civilization. On the ground, Muslims are more religious today than they were 50 years ago. Islam is more practiced today and more ingrained in cultures today than it was 50 years ago. Islamic knowledge is growing and thriving and more freely available than it was 50 years ago. All of this is a sign that Islam is rising again. And it is possible that in our lifetime or in the lifetime of our descendants, Islam may once again become a dominant force. So don't look at the world today and think that, oh, if Islam has all these qualities, why are we so weak? No, this is a blip in history, an historical anomaly. The reality is that for 80% of our history, Muslims were the most powerful and dominant civilization on earth. And it is Allah's will that we are born in one of those few periods where that's not the case. And perhaps we were born in this time so we can be part of the movement that makes it the case again. Perhaps it is through our efforts and through our hard work and our sacrifices that this ummah becomes dominant once again. And it's really more possible today than it was when I was young. When I was young, the world was a very different place, and it didn't seem like any Muslim country was even close to becoming a powerful world leader. 20 years later, the current superpowers are falling, new superpowers are rising. Soon there'll be vacuums in leadership, and that will be an ideal opportunity for the Muslim world to re-establish itself and to regain dominance. But this is the qadr of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives power to whom He wills and He takes power away from whom He wills. We can just do the best we can. And we just try our best to live in the best land we can find and to make the lands that we live in a better place. So this is our theme and this is what we're going to cover over the next few videos. In our next lesson, we're going to look at why Islam is the most important quality for a successful civilization. And then after that, we will look at justice and peace. And then we will look at economic prosperity and hope. And then we will do a few case studies of past Islamic empires and how they embodied all of these qualities and what we can do today to try and revive some of this in our time. And once we are done with that, then inshallah, we will conclude for this year and we will take a break for a few weeks and restart next year with the second half of this chapter, which is the qualities for improving the individual, which is basically developing good relationships and uh, getting your money right. right? Having some level of wealth. With that, we come to our conclusion. I hope you found today's lesson beneficial. Jazakallah khairan wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.